Wild Things, an upcoming documentary that is currently screening as part of the Adelaide Film Festival, chronicles a year on the front lines of the climate movement in Australia. And last week I got the chance to speak to the film's director, Sally Ingleton, about her new film, her experiences making the film, climate change, logging, censorship, and much more. What exactly drew you to the stories of these activists?
So I've been making documentaries for a really long time now, probably over 35 years. And I've made documentaries, all sorts of genres and subject matters, from arts docos to people-based docos to natural history to nature science. And I've done quite a lot of producing as well as producing and directing. But I have got a real passion for telling environment stories, and this is an idea that I've had for many years, is to really try and make a film about Australia's environment movement. And in the process of working on this subject and doing the research, and there was a lot of different ways that I could have told the story, from doing a straight kind of historical piece or chronological piece where we looked at Australia's environment movement, to a more obdoc piece where we just embedded ourselves inside one campaign. That was another idea I had. There was a lot of ways that we could have done it. And in the end, I decided to really focus on people that were going to the front line of different campaigns, and I chose a sort of a selection of campaigns that all would have a kind of a connection with climate action. And so it was really important for me to look at what people were doing to protect forests, and it seemed like Tasmania was the most active in that area. Of course, if we're ever going to do anything about climate change, we need to stop the use of fossil fuels and definitely, stop new coal mines. And then really from late 2018, the energy that was being galvanised by young people actively involved in the school strike movement was just infectious and very exciting. And it was a global movement. It was something that was very big in Australia, but it was happening right throughout Europe and North America, all spearheaded really by the actions of Greta Thunberg from Sweden. And it was really exciting to see the way, this young teenager from Sweden, who was in a way quite marginalised because of her, because of her mental situation, the fact that she was, she had Asperger's syndrome, and she was just a very unusual young girl, and to see how her strength and her fortitude, it just became a beacon in that movement, and young people just gravitated to her, and she became this symbol of everything that was wrong with, I guess, the leadership of the world, and the fact that leaders all around the world were not doing anything about, this crisis that was unfolding. And the fact that she just stood up to them all, I think, was such an inspiration to so many young people, including in Australia. And so I was following that movement as it was gathering speed, and it was happening very, very quickly. And quite early on, at the beginning of 2019, I got to meet the kids from Castlemaine who were very actively involved, and so I started filming them, and then I sort of continued filming them last year in the lead up to those big actions, those huge big strike actions that happened. So they were the three big campaigns, and in going down to Tasmania and looking for someone who, I think would be inspirational. Lisa Searle just was such a standout because she was, in some ways, she looked like a typical forest activist because she's got dreadlocks and, you know, she's very passionate. But, you know, she's also just a really remarkable woman who's, you know, a doctor who's, you know, done amazing things in her medical career because she, you know, she regularly goes off and does these stints working in Central Africa for Médecins Sans Frontières, and when she returns, you know, she's on the front line climbing trees and sitting in trees for days on end. And I just thought she was a really extraordinary person and very charismatic. And so she sort of became a really strong feature in the film. And then I also spent time up at Camp Imbi um, to, you know, to tell the story of the people up there. And there was really not one person at Camp Imbi who I think um, stood out in a way. The way I decided to tell the story of Camp Imbi was that it was more an ensemble. So it was young and old and, you know, all these amazing older women that was like grandmothers that were regularly going up there and spending time on the front line. And they were very, I mean, none of them was sort of strident activists. They were just ordinary people who cared about the future of their kids and their grandkids. And so, yeah, so that was sort of the way we decided to weave the story, was following these three three campaigns,
Yeah, and
and
that's
then choosing these sort of landmark campaigns to explore as a way of showing that Australia has got a long history of environmental action.
thank you. Were any of your like preconceived notions about the climate movement, were any of them challenged or reinforced by your experiences making the film?
Um, Look, I think when I started making the film, I went into it with quite an open mind. And I mean, I guess I was looking for, you know, for subjects that were, you know, were willing to trust me and willing to share their story and willing to be filmed. And in that process, like all filmmakers, you know, you find some people who you think are going to be really strong characters, but then, you know, they kind of fall away or they don't in the end give you the access that you need. The thing is, when you're making a documentary, you really need the subjects to be absolutely on board with the process of being filmed. You just don't want people that are half-hearted. And a lot of people don't understand what's involved. They think it might just be one interview and that's it. They also, they just, you know, I mean, most people don't understand what's involved in making a documentary. They don't know that it is, you know, quite a long journey. And it can take like a lot of time to carve the story, you know. And in this particular film, you know, we were filming on and off for well, probably 2-3 years, you know, with this film. And right up until when we were editing, you know, we were still looking for sequences that we really needed in order to make the film work. And that's where Lisa was fantastic, because I knew we really needed some strong action-based sequences of the forest activists defending a coup. I mean, that was really critical. And you know, they had said that it was likely that there was going to be actions happening over last summer, but we never quite knew when they were going to be happening. And of course, we weren't. I mean, we weren't manipulating anything. We weren't making things happen. So we were just very much reliant on the goodwill of the activists to be able to ring us and say, look, you know, there's an action happening, or you know, you need to try and get down here to film it. And so that, you know, I had a lot of crews in different places and people that I knew who could get to the location, you know, within a few hours, who would help cover that story for me. and where I could, I got down there when I was down there for some of those big forest actions. But sometimes, you know, we were there and we were waiting for the logging contractors to turn up. We'd been told they were going to turn up, and they didn't turn up. And the same happened with the police. We were told, you know, the police were coming, but then they wouldn't come, or they didn't come. So, you know, there were times where, you know, it was a bit of a waiting game. You sort of a bit of a cat and mouse game. You're waiting for that action of the two sides meeting, which you sort of need in order to give you some drama. But fortunately, you know, in the end, we did get that that confrontation, which was what we really needed, I think, to show our audience what the activists are doing, and you know, the reasons why they're in there, and yeah, so that was pretty important. But in terms of you know, there was a lot of, I had a lot of things in play, is all I can say, where I had feelers out with a lot of different organisations trying to become embedded in particular covert actions, but often it would suddenly happen really quickly, and I wouldn't be able to get there in time. Or a lot of the sort of activity that happens with activists, it's done very they really, you know, they want to keep their activities quite secret. And so even though I think they trusted me, there were a lot of times where, you know, I would be there filming, and there were certain things that they didn't want filmed, and that happened a lot. It was like, no, please don't film this, please don't film that. I know it happened up at Camp Imby as well, where quite a lot of the meetings, the actions they were fine to have those filmed, but quite a lot of the planning of actions, they were very careful, I suppose, about any of those conversations being filmed. And I think that's just, you know, it's the legal world that activists are having to navigate at the moment, where a lot of the things that they do, if they're seen to be, you know, planning to lock onto machinery and so on, then that is seen to be an illegal action. And so a lot of the activists were quite worried that they didn't want to be shown to be doing things in a premeditated way, which could, you know, which could jeopardise their situation legally. So that was just something that, you know, I had to work with. And in the end, look, we relied a lot on, you know, I think once these various campaigns trusted me, you know, like Frontline Action on Coal were fantastic, because they were willing to share a lot of the footage that they had from actions that had happened, you know, over a period of, you know, of a few months. So, you know, we relied a lot on that material to be part of the texture of the film.
Awesome. I understand that there was some controversy surrounding the film. I can't remember if it was a someone from the Liberal Party brought up your film in Parliament or something, saying that it was like
So
a how-to
in
guide for. I tried
yeah.
researching it further, but every single time I found an article about it, there was a paywall. So,
Oh, okay. I can probably send you a couple of things if you like.
okay.
So a few weeks ago, so first of all, there's an FOI application in to the Department of State Growth, which is the department where Screen Tasmania is in that department. And I don't know who has put in the FOI application, but basically they wanted to see our funding application, and because they believe that, you know, the film is like a how-to guide into how to become an activist. And it was quite interesting that whoever they are, and I presume they're from the timber industry, you know, are so worried about the film that they're really they've, alerted basically politicians on both sides that they shouldn't have funded this film. Um, so yeah, it was really interesting. Anyway, so there's a Liberal government in Tasmania, so they obviously fed questions to the Labor, um, the opposition, who asked questions about why this film was funded, and they were asking all these questions without any of them having ever seen the film. So it was extraordinary, and it is a kind of, so what they've been pushing for is that the guidelines for funding of films needs to be reviewed. But that's an extraordinary thing to be requesting, because basically that's censorship of the arts. I mean, that's saying, that um, only certain types of stories can be told. And, this story is about the people that are defending the forests of Tasmania. And the forests are these beautiful ancient, rainforests that are thousands and thousands of years old. I mean, they're extraordinary ecosystems. So to be seen to be, that these people are like vandals is, to me, is just extraordinary. But the good thing was, I mean, it did create quite a stir in the media, and there were quite a few articles that came out that were very, not so much supportive of when they were supportive of the film, but they were supportive of the fact that these stories should be allowed to be told. You can't start censoring the arts. You really can't. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how it plays out. I fully imagine that once we start trying to release the film in Tasmania, whether we're going to have people picketing outside the cinema or whatever, I don't know. Trying to stop the film from being screened. Oh dear.
But at least you know that you're making an impact if you've got the logging companies
Yeah,
scared
that's
witless of
right.
your film.
Well, they are scared. I think they're scared because they're in an industry that's dying. It's an industry that's heavily propped up by government subsidies. Most of the jobs that have been lost in that industry, they've been lost through mechanisation. I mean, if you go to a logging coupe, I mean, all the jobs, they're done by machines. They're not done by, individuals hand chopping down trees anymore. They're all done by machines. So to be sort of blaming activists for, for the fact that their jobs are being lost is just ridiculous. The jobs have gone through mechanisation. And I just think for the Tasmanian government to make it legal that these ancient rainforests can be logged, and I mean, they're logged for specialty timbers. So the contractors will go in, and in some cases they'll do a clear fell. In other cases, they'll go in and just do selective logging where they're taking particular trees. But in that process of taking particular trees, I mean, they knock down a whole lot of other stuff, and all what they knock down is just left to rot, and it can become a real fire hazard. And a lot of them, it's been proven that a lot of the bushfires that have happened in native forests, have been due to poor logging practice, where all the canopy is cut down and is just left so that it dries and becomes a real fire risk. I mean, that's happened in the forests in New South Wales and in Victoria. I mean, the areas that survived a lot of those bushfires that happened on the East Coast last summer, a lot of the areas that survived were areas that had never, ever been logged because they were still very much intact, and they had all their understory and, yeah. Anyway.
Are you optimistic about where we're headed, or?
Look, I'm optimistic that I think there's an amazing group of young people out there that are very concerned about what's happening to the planet and to the environment. And I think they're busily getting the skills to try and do something about it. So I'm certainly optimistic about that. I'm not that optimistic about political leadership. I think at the moment, political leadership right across the world is, there's a few cases where there's some enlightened leaders, but unfortunately, most of the leaders are very concerned. They're just concerned with they've got wrong priorities, and I think a lot of them are still, influenced heavily by the fossil fuel industry. But there's you just have to oppose it. You have to remain vigilant, and we have to remain vocal. There's no point in giving up. If we give up, then they're going to win. And I suppose one of my big reasons for making the film is to encourage people that it's really important to get active. And the young people are a great example of that, because a lot of them were feeling isolated and depressed and anxious about what was going on in their futures. But by getting involved with other young people and becoming empowered and learning how to use their voice, has made them feel much, much happier and much stronger and more resilient. So I think, Bob Brown, is a great inspiration. He always says, don't get depressed, get active. And I think that's a really good motto to have.
So you've kind of already covered that with this question with your last answer, but if you could give any advice to any activists who might be reading this article or listening to this interview, we're currently about to go into bushfire season, and we'll see presumably larger fires than we saw last summer. What advice would you give to climate activists going into 2021?
I think the important thing is to read up about what is happening in terms of climate change, so that you understand the science. I think it's really, really important to understand the really clear, basic science behind global warming or climate change, because then you can argue, because you'll get lots and lots of people who will discredit what you're trying to do, or will say there's no such thing as climate change, climate's always changing. And you've got to be able to stand firm and argue back using clear science and finding some really good examples. And there's a lot of stuff online now about how you can answer those arguments. So I would really encourage any people that are interested in the movement and in climate activism is to read up on that, just so that you feel like you understand it, and you won't be belittled by someone who starts to argue that there is no such thing as climate change. And join a movement. Become part of a local group in your local community. Almost every local suburb has got a climate action group, and you can find lots of them on Facebook, and I'm sure they're on Instagram and so on as well. But I think then just join a movement. And look, one of the great things with this film is that I really hope that some of those local groups will find a way of hosting a screening. We're going to put together guides so that local groups will be able to host a screening, and then use it as a way of sitting around and discussing what can be done in terms of trying to make your community more sustainable. Just start local or within your school. How can you make your school community more sustainable? What can you do to reduce waste? What can you do to make your community a greener environment to live in? Just trying to create a really inspiring vision for your local community is what I would encourage all climate activists or people that are interested, in the environment movement to do, is to start local.